Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show and welcome to another pull list review for comics that I read in December 2021. And so just like I announced in the previous episode, the Spotlight episode, I'm splitting off Comic Chat into two separate areas. One is the Spotlight episodes where I do news, previews, and other things. And I'm going to continue my pull list reviews, which are all the comics that I've read for a particular time period. In this case, like I said, December 2021. And so those comics are Wayne Family Adventures Episode 2, the Intrusion one-shot, Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular, Action Comics 546, Superman and the Authority Volume 1, Thor Volume 2, Scout's Honor trade paperback, Decorum number 8, Serial number 8, and Truth and Justice number 7. As always, when I talk about these comics, I may spoil some things, so be forewarned of that. And so we'll just get right into it. Like I said, I started off with the month of December with Wayne Family Adventures, the second episode. So the kids come back after a patrol, and because no one was injured, Alfred rewards them with treats, which is kind of weird, a weird kind of positive reinforcement, right? A friendly fight breaks out between them when they realize there was only one chocolate chip cookie left. I feel about this comedic setup as Batman is shown in one of the panels. He's dryly sipping his coffee as he stares blankly ahead. So, but it's for laughs. Anyway, in the end, it's Batman who ends up with the cookie and invites them to try to take it from him, which is also kind of twisted, right? We're talking about him sparring with his kids. It's Batman, the Batman family, so I guess it makes sense regardless. But anyway, Alfred stops the shenanigans with his arrival. Anyway, I've talked about, obviously, the first episode in a previous pull list review. I still love the construction of how this comic book story is told with the scrolling panels. One of the panels is blurred to show quick movement, borrowing what I think of as an animation technique, and is something I don't think I've really ever seen in a printed comic book. Now, granted, this is not a printed comic book, but you know what I mean. What I don't understand is the order of the credits. And I know this has nothing to do with the actual story content, but I find it fascinating. Inks is first, then the writing, then storyboards, then backgrounds / rendering, flats, and finally letters. I'm just fascinated by this concept. Anyway, I need to learn more about it, about the creative process for this particular webcomic as well. And is this typical? These kind of credits for web comics? I don't know. Are they borrowing from something, anime or manga or something I'm just not even familiar with? So if you know, please let me know. All right, next up is a one-shot from Heavy Metal / Magma Comics with an X called Intrusion. This is it's a flip book with one side telling the story from the perspective of an Acadian French family in 1760s Louisiana as they deal with what would become known as the Grunch Road Monsters. And then the other side of the comic, you flip it over, the other side of the comic book tells the story from the perspective of the Cryptid family. So the Grunch Road Monsters. And so when I first saw this in previews, I saw the Cryptid cover, and actually don't even remember seeing the human family cover in that. But what I did is I read the human story first, and I'm not sure why, because it's not constructed in a way in which you need to read it one over the other. But I guess, I'm a human being, so I read it from that perspective. And how limiting is that? Anyway, I wonder if I had read this in reverse order, if I may have thought about it differently, or not, probably not, because so what happens is both of these stories come together in the middle of the comic book with the same tragic conclusion that then diverges slightly for the denouement. Basically, human beings are awful creatures, and we lash out with violence when fearful, and we encounter things that are other. And so either way you read it, you get that same conclusion. At least I did anyway. But I would love to see more of these kind of flip books. I've encountered them before in the past. I can't remember the last one that I read that was like this, but I liked it. It was a fun little short story. Not so short is the Wonder Woman 80th anniversary 100-page super spectacular. And I don't know if I've said this before with a previous 80th anniversary issue that I've talked about, but I love those anniversary issue titles. They're a mouthful, but I don't know, they're fun. It's fun to say them because it's an announcement of the celebration of this particular character. In this case, obviously Wonder Woman. I also like the so we're going to talk about the cover here real quick. I love the little Wonder Woman or the W logo that is celebrating Wonder Woman's 80th anniversary. It's just a nicely designed logo they've got here, and I think they have it on the inside cover as well. Yeah, showing her face and then her logo in the corner of this W with the number 80. So I don't recall seeing something like that in the other 80th anniversary specials I've read over the last year or two. So that was neat. That's cool. Speaking of the cover, I got the Jen Bartel costume celebration variant showing Diana's costumes through the ages, the Golden Age, the Silver and Bronze Age, the Copper Age or the 90s Age, whatever you want to call it, the New 52 version, and today. So really cool. It also evokes the spinning costume change from the television series, the 1970s television series, with how Bartel has posed these Wonder Woman images along with the lasso twirling around Diana. So I really, really like that. All right. I'll just briefly describe and give some commentary on the actual content here, the stories, the short stories. The first story is for current readers of the series, where Diana is thought to be dead, I think. I'm not all caught up on what's going on in Wonder Woman comics right now. But anyway, Steve Trevor is making a documentary about Diana, and we get to see various interviews with her or about her. It's kind of bittersweet, but it talks, it's demonstrating what Wonder Woman means to various people through the lens of Steve's grieving for losing Diana, I guess. The second story is about young Diana's conversation with Nubia about the truth of oneself. And I believe it's a prelude or an excerpt from the Adventures of Young Diana one shot coming out in October, which I think they had an advertisement for, right after that story. So that was, good editorialship there. The third tale is a World War II era Wonder Woman being helped by Etta Candy and the Holiday Girls. That was a lot of fun. Then we get the first pinup that I really liked of Hippolyta and Nubia sparring by David Marquez. The fourth story is an early JLA story, or set in the early JLA times, drawn by Garcia Lopez, where everyone is bugging Diana for advice and she gets snippy with them. That was fun to see. It's always fun to see these stalwart, always right superheroes, exhibiting some more base human emotions. But fortunately, as it should be depicted, she quickly moves out of that and realizes something about herself, which is she looks inward with the help of her lasso. To discover that, quote, sometimes I get to improve the world without throwing a punch or waving a sword, and that is everything. And then she goes off and tries to help out her fellow JLAers some more. My favorite story of the bunch, which is, I think, about halfway through, is the mod-era Wonder Woman going on a blind date with Clark Kent, set up by Lois Lane, which I thought was adorable. Anyway, the two of them learn something about themselves. Superman learns to loosen up a little bit. Diana learns to embrace change and adventure a little bit more, I guess. It's mostly Diana teaching Clark to not be such a square. But my favorite thing about this is the art by Doc Shaner. The overall coloring, the design of the clothing, It's so late 60s. I just love it. Let's see. Following that is a Wonder Women of the Multiverse, pinup by Nicholas Scott and Annette Kwok that I quite liked. Someone out there better versed in Wonder Woman lore than I will have to let me or all of us know who all of these Wonder Women are. I recognize many of them, including there's a Flashpoint Wonder Woman, there's a Bombshells Wonder Woman, but and there, I think there's a Red Sun version from, is that the Superman book by Mark Miller, and I can't remember the artist. Anyway, but there's a bunch of them, and but like I said, I don't recognize them all. So the sixth story is a Wonder Woman versus Cheetah battle, because you can't have a Wonder Woman special or a ongoing story for very long without a Wonder Woman battling Cheetah, I guess. But I did like the ending where Wonder Woman inspires Cheetah to help save children from a collapsing building. Diana then submits to Cheetah as part of the bargain. You know, you help me, you help save these children, you can have me in the lasso. But when she does this, Cheetah rejects the offer, you know, with her pride or perhaps begrudging respect for Diana, not allowing her to accept that offer. And this is an aspect of Wonder Woman that I love. She inspires others to be better versions of themselves. And, you know, what better example for a superhero in general? But I love that, you know, Wonder Woman is to me the embodiment of that in the DC universe. The seventh story is about Saturnette and her various encounters with some of the Amazons, including Hippolyta and Artemis, and of course Diana. All this did is because I think I vaguely recall the name Saturnette, but I really knew nothing about the character. I mean, you get the backstory that you need from this story, but you know, upon further research, I discovered that Saturnette was from the Golden Age stories, and now I kind of want to go read the story or stories. I'm not sure if there were multiple appearances of Saturnette in the Golden Age. Anyway. Like I said, I want to read those. And I, for some reason, really like the Saturnette costume in the modern era in this story. I don't know, it's red and blue, and maybe just reminds me a lot of Superman. I don't know. But I found the character interesting in this particular story. Let's see here. What do we got? Oh yeah, there's an Artemis pinup by artist Danny. I like the expressionistic, or is it more abstract? So, you know, you art majors out there, you probably know the better term to describe this, but it looks like just splashes of color that make up the image, and I just really liked it. The next to last story has the New 52 Diana at odds with the goddess Demeter to convince the goddess to spare this the immortal and cursed life of one of her acolytes, and so she goes up against one of her gods, and you know, which is something that we see Diana doing a lot over the years. And really, the message of the story is live life to the fullest, because you know, we don't have immortality, and it's not all it's cracked up to be anyway. Even if we did, so. And then there's the final pinup in the series, and I haven't covered everything and all the pinups, just the ones that I like. But this one I did like was of Yara, the new Wonder Girl, by Hanena Medeiros, I believe. Really nice drawing, and considering that the only depictions of Yara that I've seen that I really like are by Joelle Jones. So this is a good image by another artist for that character. So. And then finally, the last story in this is it's a story set in the future with Diana helping some colonists with their damaged space station. So as we're seeing Diana help these colonists, you know, she's basically monologuing to us. But you know, it was the final bits that in the story that I really liked. She says, "I know my help may not be enough. The obstacles they face are so great that it would take a god to even the odds. I can only give them my strength, and hope that my strength with their courage will see them through. All I can do is hope, for hope is the greatest power of all." Yeah, I mean, we've read and seen that message so many times in literature, not to mention superhero comics, but it's worth mentioning. And again, another aspect of Diana that I really like. I tend to think of Superman as like the DC symbol of hope, but so is Diana. But I tend to, like I said earlier, I tend to think of Wonder Woman as an inspiration, and Superman as the symbol of hope. But it's all wrapped up with all these characters, and that's okay. Speaking of Superman, Action Comics number 546. So I got this because the new Teen Titans appear in it, along with the Justice League. It's Superman versus Brainiac. So he gathers them together to help him battle Brainiac, because Brainiac's back and more powerful than ever. And so anyway, I try to get the issues in which the new Teen Titans appeared, especially back then, when the new Teen Titans was at the height of its popularity. And this story was also written by Marv Wolfman. But it was curious because Wolfman and or Gil Kane, the artist, they focused what little attention they did give the new Teen Titans mostly on some of the newer members like Cyborg and Starfire, tiny bit of Raven and Changeling. Granted, not new, but not so much on Wonder Girl. And weirdly, Robin appears only in a couple panels, but always as a background character. It's almost like he's an afterthought in the story. But it's a Superman comic. It's supposed to feature him and not all these other characters. But it's just odd to bring the new Teen Titans and a bunch of the Justice League together, and they're just there in the background mostly. Today, this would probably be at least a two-parter, if not a 6-issue arc. And then we probably get a lot of that characterization and spotlighting of the various characters. But here it was all this Earth invasion by aliens that were being controlled by Brainiac, and then his own attack. And so it was, that was how things were done back then. Sometimes it's just like, here's all this stuff in one story. Anyway, but what I did like about it is how Superman uses, comic book superhero science to help defeat Brainiac, and also the demonstration that he's not too proud to ask for help, which I think they should do more of in superhero comics. But speaking of Superman asking for help. Didn't plan this, but anyway, here we are. Superman and the Authority. I ordered this hardcover and read it as soon as I got it because of the creative team. You got Grant Morrison writing. You've got mostly Mikhail Hanin doing the art with some other artists pitching in to do some of the sequences. But given that Morrison has written one of the best Superman stories of all time. In All-Star Superman, and I love Hanin's art. Generally speaking, I couldn't help myself. I had to read it immediately, and usually I don't do that. When I get new comics in like this, they kind of go in roughly in the order in which I get them, and I have a lot of stuff before that. So I was planning on reading something else, but as soon as I opened that up and I was just kind of flipping through it as I always do when I get new books, I just got sucked in. I read it right there, right then, and loved it. Let's see here. The story starts off with Superman talking to President Kennedy in 1963, which is something that he did do back then in his own books. Superman would talk to current presidents. It's one of the things I kind of loved about reading those old stories, old Superman stories. Anyway, that sequence is colored like comic books that were produced back then with those color dots, which I thought was just a wonderful design point. And it just gets better from there. Anyway, President Kennedy in that sequence asks Superman if he can count on the Man of Steel to help build a finer world. And then we get to the present with a Superman with graying temples. His powers are fading, and he's now wearing the Kingdom Come Superman S symbol. So immediately I was like, where are we continuity-wise? because I'm not up on the latest stories going on in Superman and Action Comics. So that kind of confused me. And it was further compounded when at the end of the book, it points you to read Action Comics 1036. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So this is in continuity. So what happened to Superman? So I had to do a little bit of digging. And so I went to the internet and discovered that this story, Superman and the Authority, follows what is called the Golden Age story arc in the Superman books. So there was continuity. I just didn't realize it. So now I'm really curious and want to go read that Golden Age story to find out what happened exactly. I mean, I know generally speaking what happens, which is, I think, how they set up John Kent, Superboy, taking over as the new Superman in current publishing history. Anyway, as far as this particular book goes, much of the rest of this series is Superman convincing Manchester Black, who's back, to join him and recruit others into a new authority team in order to help make that finer world. And that phrase comes up a few times in this series. And so I thought, well, at first I thought it was just coincidentally a line from the movie Serenity, but that's not correct. I think they actually say a better world in that. Anyway, but then I vaguely recalled the Stormwatch series. Actually, I thought of the Authority series first. I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. So sometimes my brain actually does work and I can remember things. And so I went over to my bookshelf and started thumbing through the Stormwatch stuff when Warren Ellis took over the writing of the book. And there is indeed a storyline, a 3-part storyline called A Finer World, which brings Midnighter and Apollo into the book and eventually, leads to, in a couple volumes, leads to the Authority. So is the connection A Finer World that tenuous? Is just bringing Apollo and Midnighter into it, and then from there the Authority gets formed, but we already have Superman and Manchester Black is forming a new authority. It just seems really tenuous. So it makes me wonder if I'm missing something. So anyway, back to the story. Superman and his new team, go up against some old Superman foes. And then the promise at the end of it, there's this coda to the story, to the whole thing. There's the promise of something much more interesting. So anyway, towards the end of the story, that's when they point you to Action Comics, and they're going to War World and all that stuff. But then, like I said, the coda at the end of this seems to be after that story. And what we see is Superman revealing, I think it was the Source Wall, something like that. Anyway, there's a message there. And the message is, Light Ray is. And so if you have been paying attention to DC Comics recently, there was the whole Dark Side is mantra that was going through some books. Mr. Miracle, that was used quite a bit in that Tom King and Mitch Gerard's series. And so I don't know if there's a direct connection there, but or just DC editorial playing with the whole concept of Dark Side is. And now we get Light Ray is, and man, what does that mean? So now I'm doubly intrigued. And then finally about the series, I just love the way Morrison writes Superman. In this story in particular too, Superman wants to help everyone and sees the best in everyone. But more importantly, he exudes hope, and like I was talking about earlier, and inspires you to be better. But he's not overt about it. He doesn't make you feel bad about not being the better person that he knows you can be. I love that the ability that Morrison has to just get to the core of what I also think Superman is about. Or maybe I'm just seeing things there that maybe aren't as apparent to other people. So, you'll have to let me know. Do you agree with this assessment? Do you think I'm just totally off my rocker? Do you interpret Morrison's Superman differently? I'd love to hear from you so we could talk about it. Anyway, I will read anything having to do with Superman that Morrison writes. So I love, love, love his Superman. From one godlike being to another, and now I'm not talking about Morrison. Thor, I read volume 2, which is entitled Prey. So I've always wondered what happened to Dr. Blake and Thor when they traded places. So, when Blake would slam that walking stick down and he would transform to Thor, and Thor would do the opposite with the hammer. Well, not the opposite, but slam the hammer down and Blake would appear. So in my mind, I thought it was similar to, because I'm not really up on old Thor stories. I'm more of a fan of Thor through reading his exploits in the Avengers books that I've read over the years, and then the Jason Aaron run that I love. So anyway, I thought it was similar to like what happens with Rick Jones and Captain Marvel back in the day, when one would just go into this little pocket universe area. I forget the name of it now, and just kind of be there in suspended animation, so to speak. But what we find out here, and I'm sure this is a bit of a retcon, I don't know, maybe it isn't, but what we find out that Odin set up was far worse than that. Far worse. And as always, and as an aside, Odin needs a comeuppance. I can't believe how many times I say something along those lines every time I talk about Thor comics, and when Odin's involved. Which in the end, Thor does promise him one later. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I love also, I love, speaking of relationships with Thor, I love the brotherly relationship here between Thor and Loki, with Loki enacting a punishment to Blake because Thor couldn't do it. He felt too bad, guilty. Unfortunately, though, it does maybe not unfortunately, but it does set up the eventual rematch between Thor and Blake. And I will say the Nick Klein art in the latter half of this collection is gritty and visceral and perfect for the tone of the story, with some of the stuff that we see Blake doing to the various people or creatures that have or are Thors. So I'll talk about just a couple of those in just a second. So other good moments in this volume. At the beginning, Iron Man takes Thor's hammer, and Thor tells him, quote, "Do not mistake wielding my hammer for wielding my power." And as he says this, a powerful lightning storm is starting to encompass them. And then the lightning strikes and forms the shape of a T around them. And during that time, Thor also calls Tony a tin man in a lightning storm. So, and then, Thor gives him, or Tony gives him the hammer. Let's see. Dr. Blake, after finding out that Jane Foster works in a morgue now and was once Thor, because Blake is, I forgot to mention this part of it. Blake is going out and he kills at least one of the people that once held the power of Thor, and then is, or at least stealing it. I'm not sure, because he steals Beta Ray Bill's Thor power, but doesn't kill him. So I'm confused by that now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so he's going around doing that. And so, he's just catching up with Jane because Jane's an old friend. But once he finds out that she was once a Thor, his feelings, at least for Jane, instead of him killing her as he did others, or at least another, he walks away. And as he does so, he tells her, quote, "You don't belong in a morgue." It's a wonderful double meaning here by the writer. You don't belong dead. Even though I wanted to kill you, I fantasized about it in a sequence before he walks away. But it's a nice commentary, on Jane Foster wasting her talent in a morgue. And then finally, last bit, in the confrontation between Blake and Throg, the Thor that is a frog. I love saying Throg. Blake manages. Well, okay. So the sequence is they're fighting, and Throg is coming, leaping towards Blake to strike him with a hammer, and Blake just grabs Throg and stuffs him in his mouth to eat him. And you think, oh my God, he just ate Throg. But Blake finds that the Frog of Thunder is harder to kill than that. So thankfully. All right, next up is Scout's Honor, which I found to be an interesting premise. And this is something that I read late in December, I believe. So just made the 2021 reading list mark. Interesting premise. There's some gender role issues being explored in this, along with the same old of old men doing anything to keep power. And no offense to the creative team, to the premise of this book, but I am so tired of those kinds of stories. I mean, usually these old men that desire power and hurt others to retain it or attain it usually get their comeuppance, and that's nice. I don't know. I read so many of those, so I guess I'm tired of those kind of stories. Also, I had a problem with how convincing or charismatic the main character was in the last part of the story to be able to achieve what she did. However, if there is a sequel, I might give it a shot, because there was some interesting future dystopian world stuff set up, and the fact, the whole idea of Scout's Honor is that a society is created from the remnants of an old Scout handbook, which is very fascinating, considering that I was a Boy Scout very briefly when I was younger. So I recognized a lot of things. There was even a point where someone used the term Weebelo, and I honestly don't remember what that is. I just remember I was trying to attain that rank. Is that even the right term? Like I said, it's been a long time. So I recognize that term is what I'm saying, I guess. Okay, Decorum number 8, the finale for now. Given what the scope of what this series could be based on the first issue that I thumbed through after I read this final issue, coupled with the breadth of Huddleston's art styles in the series, I actually was disappointed overall by the rather mundane caper plot that to me it took over the scope of what this story could be. And maybe that was the plan, and maybe I'm unfairly hoisting upon this series my own headcanon that's not fair. Still, it is what it is. That was my reaction to it. However, there is a promised second volume, whenever that might come. I'm still waiting on, what was the series that Hickman promised several years ago? I got it. When did I go to? What year was it that I went to Heroes Con? And he announced, what was it, Frontier? I think it was his sort of Star Trek tale. Haven't seen it yet. Anyway, at the end of this book, we're told that there's a promised second volume that I think might deliver more on that implied promise, or my mistaken promise that I have taken from this. But anyway. If you've not picked up Decorum and the eventual collection that's coming out, you should read this for the art, if nothing else. Huddleston is doing so many different things, so many different styles at play here. It makes me wonder if there's a pattern I should discern from those styles. For example, Huddleston uses simple ink drawings, just black and white ink drawings at times, and in other scenes, there's these beautiful digital paintings of these landscapes and scenery. And then there's other various styles that he's blending in with this. And sometimes he'll use multiple styles in the same scene. So what is he after from a storytelling standpoint by using all these various styles? I don't think I don't think I've examined this enough to answer that question. If there is anything that he's going for, and if so, what is it? So it definitely makes me want to reread this series to try and figure it out. All right, the penultimate issue in this list, serial number 8. by Terry Moore. So in this, both the authorities and Zoe are closing in on serial killer Jenny. And we get an origin of sorts as to why Jenny is doing what she's doing. But the finale to the issue was strange to me. For some reason, I read this issue number 8. I thought it was the last issue of the series. And when I read that or saw that final panel with what's going on in it, I thought, oh my God, this is how you end it, Terry Moore? I was ticked, I would admit, for 30 seconds. But then I realized that this issue goes on, or the series goes on for, I think, till issue 10. So this is good. It's good that there's more to it than that, because it's like, oh my God, that. But I will say that ending, boy, that's a cliffhanger ending. And Terry Moore has actually literally done cliffhanger endings in in his comic books. So it definitely makes you want to see what comes next. But I don't know. It's very bizarre. It'd be like, trying to think of something equivalent in like movie or TV series, but someone being attacked, let's put it that way. And that's the end scene that you see, and you have to wait, next week or next season to find out what happens next. I mean, it's not quite to the level of Best of Both Worlds and Star Trek: The Next Generation. Sort of, you can make a comparison there, but much better done in Star Trek. Anyway, I'm getting way off track here, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how this ends up, I guess, as I am with all of Terry Moore's stories. Okay, and then finally, Truth and Justice, number 7, the end of the series, which I guess is appropriate that now we're at the end of this episode. I bought and read this because I had already bought issues 1 through 6, but for some reason I had not ordered issue 7 and didn't realize it for a few months at the very least. And so once I realized that, I had to order the back issue. Anyway, so this issue features Zatanna going up against Dr. Destiny, which is a villain that we don't see a whole lot of as far as I recall. He had if I'm remembering correctly, had a very major role in an issue or two of Sandman back in the 90s that was just killer. What Neil Gaiman wrote him doing, and I forget the artist on that particular story, but so in other words, that Sandman story kind of elevated Dr. Destiny as far as a villain in the DC universe. So whenever I see him now, I'm like, ooh, what's he going to do now? What's he up to now? How is it going to compare to that previous appearance? And unfortunately, it's a pale comparison, but whatever. I will say I did like some of the more nightmarish type scenes in this. There's a sequence where Zatanna's falling through like a trap door or a hole or something, and there's another person in this dreamscape that was helping Zatanna at first. And so you see Zatanna falling in one panel, but then the next panel, it's their bodies are swapped. And so the other person's falling. And then the third panel is Zatanna falling again. So it's like this, the artist was really trying to evoke a nightmare situation. Dream logic isn't always logical, right? And so things like that could easily happen in a dreamscape. So I appreciate that. There's some other things in there as well that evoke that. So I like the tale, but I kind of think of Truth and Justice, that series, as a means to spotlight some lesser known talent or new talent. And so I'm glad that they did this, and I would like to see more books like this to promote new talent. Or at least new ways of telling stories about these familiar characters. So keep it up, DC. Okay, that is all of the books, like I said, that I read in December 2021, and this marks the 13th pull list review of books where I'm talking about the books that I read during that month. So I started this in December 2020, and so here we are now, back around, so to speak. But I plan on continuing these pull list reviews. I know January's is going to be a big one, so I might have to cut some of those books because I'm reading a whole lot more. I tweeted out when I was doing my numbers for how many books I've read that year and whatnot. It wasn't a whole lot. Considering how many unread comic books and collections I have in my office here, I would need to read a lot to kind of get caught up with stuff. I mean, I don't need to do it this year, but I decided that I wanted to read more comics this year. So I'm off to a great start. I've got a big pile building up. December was a little light compared to some others, just because of the holidays and some other stuff that happened in the month that I might be talking about in a future Gutters episode if you're interested. Anyway, I will leave you with that. If you have any comments or feedback for me on any of these books, or if you just like to suggest some things for me to talk about, I would love that. You can do so by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at longboxreview. And as always, you can leave comments at the website longboxreview.com. And thanks for listening. And I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.